Ask the MP. The Right Honourable is in the hot seat. Ask the MP with Farai on ZFM Stereo.
Ask the MP is only on ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. Thank you for tuning in this Tuesday. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. Tonight, we are talking about the protection and the promotion of children's rights in the SADC region. That is the focus of our discussion tonight. And let me very quickly introduce my panel so we can get straight into this discussion. In no particular order, I'd like to begin by introducing the National Director for the National Director of the Zimbabwe National Council for the Welfare of Children, Reverend Taylor Nyanhete. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you on ZFM Stereo.
Thank you for inviting me.
Alongside him is the programs manager from the same organization, that is the Zimbabwe National Council for the Welfare of Children, Maxim Murungweni. Thank you so much for coming through, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
And then lastly, but certainly not least, and I kept for last because she's the only lady on the panel, Madrini Chiku is the Southern Africa Senior Regional Advocacy Director for World Vision. Ma'am, great to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
Indeed. Let's get straight into our discussion tonight. We are talking, of course, about the promotion and protection of children's rights in the SADC region. And this is a particularly topical and pertinent discussion because we know that there has been a meeting or a forum that has been undertaken recently in collaboration with the Child Rights Network for Southern Africa. Very quickly, maybe I can begin with you, Reverend Nyanhete, to give us an overview of the purpose of that gathering. What happened, where was it, and what were the key outcomes?
Thank you. The CRINSA, in acronym, happened in Zimbabwe, in Harare, and it was at the invitation of Zimbabwe National Council for the Welfare of Children. We are also part of that network, the Child Rights Network for Southern Africa. And this network was formulated to try and push the agenda of children within the SADC summit, where our leaders meet annually to discuss, various issues affecting their citizens within SADC. So this was an annual meeting, one to elect new leaders and also to receive the 2017 annual report for CRINSA and also to plan for 2018 going onwards, given that the SADC summit is going to happen in July or August this year.
Now, I suppose, Maxim, the purpose of such meetings, just to bring you in, the purpose of such meetings is to ensure that child rights, issues affecting children are not put on the back burner, because usually when these heads of state meet, the economy more and more increasingly is becoming the main focus and the core business of these meetings, politics, and other regional issues. I remember, when there was a cholera threat, meetings were convened in the emergency and things like that. But how much prominence or importance is given to issues of children?
Yes, but like you rightly said, the issues of children, they are being put at the periphery. Actually, there is a report that shows how the states are prioritizing children's issues, and it shows that generally the SADC countries are not putting much priority on children's issues. Hence, the formation of CRINSA, Child Rights Network for Southern Africa, so that we can engage at a regional level to ensure that children's issues are also at the forefront when these national development agendas are being done. So it is a platform for us to push to make sure that children's issues really are taken into consideration, especially at policy formulation and also allocation of resources. So we are moving with a theme of we should invest in children so that we harness the demographic dividend. As you might be aware, in most countries in Southern Africa, more than 55% of the population comprises of children and young people. So there's a demographic bulge when it comes to children and young people. Yet we are not utilizing that demographic bulge. So we need to invest so that we harness the demographic dividends. So the only way to do that is to make sure that the issues, when the heads of states meet, they also discuss issues to do with children and they prioritize these issues.
How successful or how effective have you been now? Either you, Reverend, or Maxim, what sort of impact are you able to give us? Perhaps not exact examples, but just to show, that this sort of advocacy can work. Are there encouraging signs on the horizon?
Yes, they are. One of them is that a significant number of states within SADC are reporting to the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children, which is a committee of experts which considers reports from countries as part of the AU agenda. So we are seeing more and more countries reporting. In fact, there are very few who have not made reports to the AU. We are also beginning to see some lobbying that is happening to try and get the agenda of children onto the SADC, and I think I'll leave that to Madrin to speak more to some of the issues that we are pushing to get onto the SADC summit.
And so let me bring you in, Madrin Chiku. She is from World Vision. She's a Southern Africa Senior Regional Advocacy Director, and so perhaps best placed to speak about this. When we look at the SADC region, at what stage, what level are issues of children being put, and what is being done to make sure that that agenda is advanced?
Okay, like what Reverend and Maxim have already alluded to, the children's issues are not really a priority. And us as advocates for children's rights, we are working together with other countries in the SADC region to ensure that that agenda is prioritized. As a result, we are working with CRITA, which is the Child Rights Network Southern Africa. We have got two critical issues under discussion right now. At regional level, we have got the SADC Children's Protocol, which we are working together. It's still work in progress. But recently, in Zimbabwe, we had what is known as the Child Rights Barometer. The Child Rights Barometer is an initiative where we conducted a comprehensive survey which explored the issues to do with children, particularly policies to do with children, to see how countries in the region were prioritizing children's issues. As experts, we don't just look at things at superficial levels. We therefore had to be informed by a research. And then what we then did with our partners in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Swaziland, and Zambia, we identified experts who had to explore articles from the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Children. And each expert was given a certain article to do a research on and look at policy issues, etc. So that is the process that we are at. So at this meeting that Reverend was talking about, we actually had a validation meeting where we had completed the first process, and we invited the experts in Zimbabwe to validate the information. And we are expecting the other 3 countries in the region to do the same. And after we have done that, we'll escalate it to other SADC protocols in the region. So we are doing quite a lot.
You say other 3 countries. Someone sitting might be wondering, we know that SADC's got 15 member states. Why you only mention, why 3? Who are these other 3?
Okay, the other 3 are Zambia, Malawi, and Swaziland. So because it was a pilot, that is the sample that we selected.
Okay.
So from that sample, we are able to come up with quite a fair representation.
Now, one of the things that I've spoken at length about whenever I talk to parliamentarians, to legal experts, is the fact that, a lot of the laws in our country are not aligned to the new constitution, issues to do with the Bill of Rights. So when we talk about child rights and child protection, particularly looking at the Zimbabwean perspective, are the laws, are there laws to adequately protect children and protect and promote their rights? And could there be issues of alignment to the new constitution here? Because a lot of the time that is something that has affected the delivery and the ability of people to enjoy rights that are enshrined in the constitution.
That is very correct. Actually, there are quite a number of areas that are misaligned. And Reverend Nyanhete is a guru on that. I'll allow him to speak into that.
Reverend Nyanhete.
Yes, in terms of alignment, you're correct to say we have, the children's laws have not been aligned. And just to mention a few, one of them is the Children's Act. And this is a protective law for children in Zimbabwe. It is yet to be aligned. It's still speaking to the age 16 as a child, not 18 and below. It still speaks to the issues. It doesn't speak to the issues of private probation officers who are supposed to help public probation officers because they're in short supply, right? It also has to align in terms of age of consent to sex. The age is still at 12, right? We also have the marriages bill. We have a bill. Remember, in Zimbabwe, marriages are in 3 categories. The common law, the customary marriage, which does not define the age of a child as we stand today. Then the civil marriage that allows one to marry more than one wife. Then we also have the marriage, the 5.11, the monogamous. So they're trying to harmonize this into one law, referring to all these marriages. And I think there's still some controversy in that bill, which need to be addressed. One example is where you are in a monogamous marriage and then your spouse has a child outside marriage. How do you then handle that? In terms of rights, that child has equal access to your estate.
Indeed.
Right. But then, in terms of that marriage, how do you then resolve that? Where you have accumulated assets with one spouse and you have children with that spouse, and then you have this child coming in on an equal basis. It could be a source of conflict. So these are areas that need to be addressed. We also have children in conflict with the law. And now there is a new bill, the Justice for Children bill, which the Minister of Justice has put together. This also speaks to the age of consent. It also speaks to age of criminality. As we stand, it's at 7. So a child can commit a crime at 7 years old and be subjected to the court processes. And there's one incident which I think last month, which happened, or early this month, which happened in Wange, where a 9-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy or young boy then connived and murdered
another child,
another 4-year sibling. And this matter is in the courts, right? So there has to be a process there. So the age of criminality, the argument is that can a child commit a crime at 7 and be subjected to court processes? That's another issue.
Indeed, and I'll just, I mean, Maya, as a layman, we are told that, if I would argue that if a child can't enter into a contract, then surely they can't also be subjected to such processes.
Yes.
But anyway, let me bring in Maxim. We'll come back. Okay, go ahead.
The other issue is the one on Marriage Act. Particularly for us as women, it affects us because that is the one that affects children in terms of child marriages. You find that there's also a misalignment in terms of the age of consent and the legal age of majority. So you find that at times perpetrators can get away with issues taking advantage of the misalignment of laws. And this is the reason why we are here, because we want to advocate for the alignment of laws, because perpetrators, some of them are well educated, some of them may be ignorant, but they are aware that there is this misalignment and they take advantage and ride on that.
Indeed. Maxim, to what extent have you engaged with lawmakers in this country to ensure that these issues are brought to the fore? I mean, the tenure of this parliament is about to come to an end. Will these issues just hang in limbo, or will they be, dealt with?
Yes, but as civil society in the children's sector, I think we've tried to engage the Parliament of Zimbabwe, especially with support from Southern Africa Parliament Support Trust. We were at the forefront of strategic engagement with Parliament. They've done much in terms of capacity building of the parliamentarians, engagement with the parliamentarians, taking the issues, even presenting position papers to the parliamentarians. During this visit, our other colleagues from SADC, they had a learning visit to the Parliament of Zimbabwe, where through the support of Subtrust, we managed to engage the Clerk of Parliament, and they explained how civil society in Zimbabwe is engaging in the Parliament of Zimbabwe and coming up with laws that make sure that they address issues of children. So they were quite impressed that we, civil society, through Subtrust, were engaging the Parliament of Zimbabwe, and they said they would want to replicate the same in their countries. So this is a good thing that Subtrust is doing in terms of engaging, bringing that engagement between civil society and Parliament of Zimbabwe. And I think there have been positives in terms of engagement of Parliament of Zimbabwe civil society. For example, we now have the Parliament Budget Office, which is an independent institution that specifically analyzes the Parliament budget and advises the Parliament and conducts research on issues that the Parliament of Zimbabwe needs to address on. So we're already engaging the Parliament Budget Office on issues to make sure that whenever the national budget is planned, it is child-friendly. So that's one of the issues that we are engaging the Parliament. We are also saying the senior Parliament should also interact more often with the junior Parliament. We've got the junior Parliament. So there should be that interaction between the senior Parliament, the junior Parliament, where the senior parliamentarians, they mentor the junior parliamentarians, but also the junior Parliament, they take children's issues so that they are debated in the main August House, so that those then they influence policy making. So with support from Subtrust, I think we are engaging Parliament, and comparing with other countries in the SADC region, we are a step ahead. So we want to take that opportunity to make sure that we really have tangible, when the policies are implemented, when the policies are formulated, this should then be followed by implementation. Because the challenge is that we may have good laws, good policies, yet the implementation is lacking. So that's how we are engaging the Parliament of Zimbabwe to make sure that the policies are there, and when they are there, they should be adequately funded. And then when they are funded, the resources should be used directly to be for the benefit of children.
Yes. Reverend Nyanhete, let me ask you this. We are coming in this country from a background where, for wrong or right reasons, civic society is viewed with some suspicion, for lack of a better term. Now, bringing that into context, someone who is sitting there and saying, look, you say you are here in the name of children to protect the rights and promote the rights of children, but, how representative is your voice? Are these views that you are bringing to the aspirations, the desires, and the interests of children? And children here across the board, rural, urban, different colors, different races, different cultures, and the diversity of children in this country.
Yes, we are a representative body. One from a membership. From a membership, we have over 150 members that constitute ZNCWC. We also organize special platforms for discussions. In our regions, we have 5 regions that incorporate all the 10 provinces of Zimbabwe. And in these regions, they meet every quarter to discuss children's issues and then bring them to the national office for us then to take presentation with parliament or with government departments. We also hold a child rights coalition conference every year in September, and one is due again in September this year, where more than 200 delegates come to the conference to discuss issues of children. We also do an alternative report to the African Union every 3 years, and one of them is due this year. But when we do that, the state first has to report to the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children. It's a state requirement. They've ascended to the African Charter. They've ascended to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So these treaty bodies require them to report. The UNCRC, it's 5 years. The African Charter is 3 years. So when they report, they need then to bring out what actions they've done to address children's issues. And our alternate report feeds into the government report in terms of then responding. If there are gaps, the government is supposed then to consider what we have reported and respond to the committee on how they are going to address those issues. So the opportunities for the platforms to discuss are there, and also the SADC summit, which we are pushing for the Child Rights Protocol, as Madrin has indicated, and this barometer. The barometer will be something that will help the states to measure progress around children's rights.
Let me put this to you, Madrin, and say, or indeed the whole panel, yes, we come up with the protocol, we come up with the barometer, and where member states fall short, how do you ensure that they don't just hide behind the excuse of we don't have the resources, we don't have the funding? I'll give you an example. Many African countries signed up to the Abuja Declaration, where 15% of national budgets must go towards health. Very few, if any, are actually meeting that. And they'll just, when taken to task about it, they'll simply say, we don't have the resources, we're doing the best we can. So we come up with the protocol, we come up with this barometer, and come up with these policies, and nothing ever happens because member states will simply say, we would love to do it, but we don't have the resources. How do we manage that scenario, that we don't end up in such a scenario, and that indeed we ensure that these things we're agitating for and pushing for happen for the benefit of these children?
Yes, as civil society in partnership with other organizations, we have developed what we call the Child Monitoring Index, a child-friendly budget index. There's a international standard of the child-friendly budget index that indicates if you are saying the budget is child-friendly, meets the needs of children, what do we mean? For example, the Abuja Declaration that you have mentioned. So we are there, we do the monitoring. When the national budget is done, we analyze it to check whether how much has been allocated to go directly to children's issues. So we do the budget analysis, and then we monitor the budget expenditure and the allocation and disbursement. So if the Minister of Finance allocates, so let's say 100 million to Ministry of Health, we then want to go on was that money disbursed to the Minister of Health? If it was disbursed to the Minister of Health, what was it used for? Was it used for BDM or for salary staff, for allowances, etc.? We want to analyze how much does go to directly to the child, every cent. Is it trickling down to the child? So this is what we are doing, the budget tracking and monitoring in terms of how much analysis. But as we are as we have been highlighted, the challenge is that some of the money is not getting down to the children, to the needy child at the end of the day. So that's why we see maybe the living condition of that child is not improving. Somewhere in between, sometimes the money gets lost due to various reasons. Maybe to begin with, that maybe the allocation is not enough in terms of allocation. First of all, that data has been allocated. Maybe it's also not the priorities. How are we prioritizing our expenditure in terms of the money that has been allocated? So that is the analysis that we are doing with organizations such as NANGO, and then engagement with Parliament on monitoring with support from Subtrust to say, let's ensure that we monitor, we track the budget expenditure and see how the monies are being utilized. If there's any alarm that we need to raise, then we engage the relevant authorities, especially the Parliament, because they play the oversight role in terms of the allocation of resources. So this engagement with Parliament that we are doing with Subtrust is a good, is an example of how we can monitor and track the budget expenditure, especially with regards to children's issues. But we are saying, at the beginning of all, we're saying more money should be allocated to children. Let's invest in our children, then as opposed to treating children as a welfare case, but we should see children as an investment case. So that is the argument that we are putting on the table. So it's still nations are still warming up to the idea of investment in children. I think this could be the third year that we have engaged. So we are still trying to push the idea so that the policymakers, the parliamentarians also, they should see children as an investment, not as a welfare case.
And also as civic society organizations, we are not only just going to leave that to the government, we also have our programs, and this information that we get is also going to inform our programming. So we are also going to be complementing countries, and as you know, our role is to complement government efforts. So we are not just going to sit behind, we are also going to strengthen our programming around issues that affect children, because right now we already have the blueprint of the gaps that have been identified, and we'll program around those areas.
Now, again, I'm just looking at some of the potential challenges and how we can get around them. Something else that I think could be a challenge and would be interesting to see how we get around it is, it's one thing to have the laws and policies that protect children. How then do you ensure, yes, policy is put in place, funding is put in place, but I would imagine that now there is a need to change mindsets. Classic example, you spoke about it earlier, Madrina, the issue of marriages and child marriages. Yes. We have laws that outlaw it, but some people, perhaps out of ignorance, will ignore them. And another thing I want to bring in, and perhaps you can talk about that, Madrina, Reverend Nyanhete, as well, the issue of child labor, I think is also a big thing where perhaps these children are actually saying, you know what, I actually want to do this job. I want to work because I want to make a living. And so how do you change that from someone who's being abused but then actually doesn't realize that?
Okay. Yeah. I will talk from the aspect of child marriages. You find that the way our programs are designed, they are designed in such a way that they address particularly harmful cultural and religious practices. For instance, in World Vision, we have developed models which are known as channels of hope for gender. If there are gender dynamics that may be there, there can be a model on channels of hope for child protection. We look at it from three fronts. It can be a child protection technical aspect. We bring in church leaders, and we also bring in other dynamics like the legal frameworks, so that we raise some level of awareness. So by engaging various stakeholders, and also when we do that, we also do not leave the perpetrators outside, we do not leave our community members and families outside. We make sure that this level of engagement is all encompassing and it's holistic. And as a result, we walk through these programs and models, and the idea is to inculcate values that make people realize that some practices are harmful, And also, we cannot continue living in the 21st century. We have to keep abreast with the current trends and also change for the better. And we have seen this working because it's a behavior. These are behavior change models which are informed by psychologists, by reverends, and also technocrats. So you find that they do a greater work, and eventually after people have gone through the whole process, you see that the attitude change begins to show. Although I cannot say it changes overnight, but it's a process. So these are some of the things that we do from a child marriages perspective, and then maybe Rev can talk about the child labor issues.
Rev.
Yes. First, there are still gaps in terms of our advocacy strategy and engagement. We have not been engaging political parties. And this is an area that I think we need to strengthen in terms of advocacy, because the party manifestos need to speak to how these parties will be addressing children's issues going forward. Then we also have issues where in terms of attitudes and perceptions, it's also an area that we are going to strengthen, but in partnership with the media. And we are working on that area, because we have realized that the media's programming, or both electronic and print, has been so much about self-initiatives of journalists. But we think we need to drive the agenda from our perspective, where we then feed into the media, so that we are sure that issues, the mindset is changed, the perceptions are changed. We have quite a number of issues, not only child labor, corporal punishment. Our governments have ascended to the treaty bodies. The laws, some of them are talking to some of these issues, but when you get into practice, corporal punishment remains being practiced in schools, in homes, and in the judiciary system. We have a pending case in the Concord, which is looking into the judiciary system in terms of corporal punishment. So these are areas where we want to acknowledge that there are still gaps. And we are working, going 2019 forward, we will be working on changing perceptions and attitudes, so that we ensure that the common member of society is aware, and this is where the practice is happening. This is where change will be more effective, when they understand where they need to address to ensure that the child is protected, the child enjoys his or her right.
Reverend, ndina baba mukuru wangu akataura kuti ini ndikanzi handichakwanisa kurova mwana, hanzi mwana iye ndinomuti chienda kuhurumende ikoko, kana kuti hurumende chimutorai mwana iye kana mamurambidza kuti ndimurove. So those are some of the attitudes that we will be coming up against. Very entrenched.
Yes, they are entrenched, and it will take time to make sure people believe. We have been talking to other countries. For example, Sweden abolished corporal punishment in 1961. And it's working. So what we have discovered is that we need to work on the attitudes and the perceptions that people hold. And it's true that those statements are coming every day, even from professionals saying wangu mwana ndicharova kusvika madhongi amera nyanga. Right. But this is the way. That's where socialization also comes in. I was beaten when I was young. That was the only form of discipline that my parent believed would address or ensure that I'm corrected in terms of behavior.
And where are you now as a result?
Well, to say that I was corrected or not need to do more research on that. It can't be an abstract statement.
True.
That's how I was corrected.
True.
There has to be evidence of that. But at the same time, we also need to provide the alternative ways of disciplining children that have been researched and have information that will help parents to engage their children.
Talking about research, something that I found very, of concern and I think very important in terms of the communique that was then published at the end of this CRINSA that you held was the fact that 67% of the world's children population is living with HIV. 67% of the world's children population living with HIV are in Eastern and Southern Africa. Yes. In 2016, 79,000 children became infected with HIV in the region, accounting for 49% of the world's new infections in children. Also in 2016, 59,000 children died of AIDS-related causes, also accounting for 49% of those AIDS-related deaths amongst children. So it's very worrying. It also says that young women and adolescent girls acquire HIV 5 to 7 years earlier than young men, mainly due to older male sexual partners. It says here that you have resolved that HIV and AIDS issues need to feature prominently in that impending protocol on children. Let me begin by asking you, Madrine, I mean, we are often told, or certainly the information that we see is, we are making progress in terms of rolling back and fighting HIV. But when such statistics come to light, it appears certainly in the towards children we aren't doing as well as we thought we were or ought to be.
Okay, right. The issue of HIV and AIDS is very complex because you find that there are quite a number of dynamics to issues of infections. Some may be old infections, and they are new infections, and they are reinfections. So you realize that due to the information age and also the level of awareness raising, some infections are actually coming down, isn't it, Reverend and Maxim?
Generally, the infection rate is coming down, but there are certain sectors where it is increasing, especially the key populations. And then also looking at the truck drivers, and also even looking at adolescents. That's where it has been realized that infection in that category they increased, but generally the infection rate is declining. But those key, especially so our worries on children, they are not accessing comprehensive sexual reproductive health information. I think that's the challenge. Even the government national fertility study indicated that the children and adolescents are not getting enough information with regards to sexual reproductive health. Hence the fertility rate is increasing, the STIs are increasing in terms of that age group, the adolescents. So we need to do more programming in terms of making sure that the adolescents have comprehensive information on sexual reproductive health rights, they access services, they also receive the treatment, they are not discriminated against. We should have adolescent friendly corners in hospitals and clinics, making sure that we really target the adolescents and children. So I think that's a gap that we really need to address. Hence that increase in terms of HIV infection within that age range. So our programming should really target the children.
Yes, and I was also going to say that because of awareness raising, you realize right now because of safe practices that we advocate for, and also issues of abstinence, and also just general information. There's a lot of awareness raising that has been taking place. You realize that the infections are coming down. And also there's this group that Maxim is talking about, which is our challenge. But when it comes to PMTCT, prevention of mother to child transmission, you realize that the health sector has done quite a lot, because right now there used to be what was known as the voluntary counseling and testing, and now I think there's the provider initiated testing, where mothers, when they are pregnant and they go to the hospital, they are tested, and then once their serostatus reveals that they've got the HIV infection, you find that they walk through with medical practitioners and they are put on ART. And once a child has also been born, they are also put on ART. So you realize that in terms of that age group, you find that the infections are also low. So you find that we have got new infections and we've got old infections, and we also have certain areas where we coming up with some mitigation interventions.
Before you come in, Rev, I know you want to make a point. Please, after you do that, I knew that the minute we spoke about issues of corporal punishment, we'd torched a storm. A listener gets in touch and says, we cannot compare Zimbabwe and first world countries regarding corporal punishment. The delinquency levels among our youths point to the need for corporal punishment, of course, in moderate and reasonable levels. Not just, specifically zeroing in on the issue of corporal punishment, but just in general. You speak of, comparisons with, or not comparisons, consult, or, looking at cases like Sweden, for example. Can we really use those as a yardstick or as a barometer, given that we are third world countries, we are still developing, not just corporal punishment, but the issue of rights, the rights that children enjoy there? Are we able to realistically be able to deliver them?
Yes, we are able, because we're a society, we're revolving. So we should be able to change. The mindset is what is the challenge here. If you see those comments, they're coming from people who may not want to change. They believe in something. And this comes from our society. How many times do we understand how a child develops? When they reach the adolescence stage, it's called a storm and stress period, because there is confusion there. The other end, the person is a child. The other end, they are becoming adults. How do they move on? Some may even be fixated in that period. So if we were to ask many parents within our society to say how many are comfortable to talk about sexual reproductive health with their children, you'll find not many of us are ready and prepared to do that. We would rather refer to adults for them to handle those matters. But right now, our society is more of the nucleus, the father, mother, and children.
True.
So the focus, these parents need to take responsibility of educating their children on all aspects of life, including sexual reproductive health. So it's an issue that we need to tackle as a society, that things are changing and we need to change. If you're a parent, you need to be conversant with so many aspects of child development for you to be able to help your child move from adolescence to adulthood.
And culturally, I think the cultural dynamics also come into play, and the issue of socialization. During our times, you realize that would engage Nyanhete. But like what Rev is saying now is the nucleus family. So you find that for some communities, they think that is taboo to talk about sexual reproduction issues with children. And as a result, children are in a limbo because they don't have the tetes anymore, and they don't have, on the other hand, parents who are free to talk about these issues. And as a result, they are just left to chance. So I think we need to start engaging our children on such issues so that we prepare them from a family setup.
Before you come in, Maxim, as a father of young girls, my response to that would be that they shouldn't even be thinking of it as an option. But I'm sure that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things. Have changed. Go ahead, Maxim.
Yes, but in terms of comparing the third world and the first world, I think that's the whole essence of having our own SADC protocol and also barometer. For example, the Child Rights Network of Southern Africa, we're saying we are Southern African countries who come together. So we learn and share experience. experiences. For example, this learning visit to the Parliament of Zimbabwe, where the other SADC countries, they came and visited and learned how we are engaging with Parliament. So this is what is also happening in terms of other various issues that are happening, especially the issue of corporal punishment. Today, the African Committee expected in Mali, they deliberated on an article on ending corporal punishment. And up to now, about 11 countries in Africa have abolished corporal punishment in the judicial and also in the school setting. So we are learning from other African countries. It's not like we're comparing the first world and third world. We also learn from a SADC and then going at continental, at African Union, then we go at the UN level. So there are those case studies, best practices from other African countries. If 11 African countries have abolished corporal punishment, why not Zimbabwe being the 4th to the 12th one? So those are some of the experience. I think we really need to that's the whole essence of why there's organizations like SABS Trust that are regional, that make sure that at SADC we're all learning experiences and sharing on how to develop policies, what you have succeeded and what has failed, how to do that. So we are also, as a peer in SADC and peers in SADC, we learn from each other. So I think that's the whole essence of how do we formulate our own policies that are relevant to our own culture, etc. Yeah.
Actually, you realize that even the way these African charters, the SADC, etc. are structured, you find that we start with the international laws and the international protocols, and then we come to the continental level, and then we come to the regional level, and then we domesticate. So the issue of domestication is very key, because we realize these dynamics, the Western, the Eastern, what have you. Even in the region, you realize there are different factors that contribute. Like recently, I was in Malawi, and we were exploring the issue of child marriages, and we wanted to understand what the root causes were. You find that the root causes are totally different from our context. Because they were talking of what Chinamwari, something like that, which is a system, I don't know what to call it, but children at the age of 10, it's an initiation actually. They have to go to some place and they are taught, how to become wives. Okay. So you can imagine at 10, a child is taught that. But when you come to Zim, we don't have that. But we've got other drivers, issues of poverty, issues of lack, and many other root causes, and even cultural issues like the aspects of prioritizing the boy child to the girl child, which then leaves a girl child exposed to challenges of child marriages. So I think when we adopt certain practices is after thorough research and also taking our culture into perspective.
In terms of the roadmap going forward, Reverend Nyanhete, where to from here? I know you spoke about it a bit earlier, but in terms of where we are now, we know this barometer is being worked on. We know a protocol is coming up. Could you walk us through where to from here?
Well, in terms of the barometer, that is a question of standardizing how we'll be collecting information and then synthesizing that information to come up with a measurement, and work has started. In terms of the child rights protocol, what we learned at this recent meeting was that we need to understand how government systems work. We need to understand how the SADC committee works to ensure that we get things on the table. We are also being educated on how we need to ensure that at country level we have role models, people who can take these issues up to the SADC, so that the SADC can then adopt. It can be one country which understands well the issue of the protocol, then it can then help others understand or appreciate it. So it's a process, and we're told it will take quite a number of years to get that protocol to be in place or adopted. Yeah, so that was some of the training that was happening at the recent meeting on how to do that.
Indeed, but at least the process has started. And again, there are so many competing interests.
Yes.
There are women who are agitating for more representation and rights, youths 18 to 35, economy, people want jobs and all these sort of things. So it is a big challenge, but we certainly wish you all the best. There's a point you made earlier, Maxim, where you said that it should not be a welfare case, but an investment case. And that is a mindset shift, not now at a national level, at a government level.
Yes, that's why we want to involve, to make sure that we have constant engagement with the Parliament of Zimbabwe, with the government ministries, the executive, the legislature, so that we change the mindset and all those. And then when they sit to make decisions, they make sure that when they are allocation resources to children, they are actually investing in children. Because if we may boast that we have got a lot of children, our population pyramid is a broad base because the children are the majority. But if you don't invest capacity build, give the children the skills, the youth the skills, in time to come, these will be old people without the necessary skills. Hence, we would then run into problem. We will not be able to harness that demographic dividend that we should be able to utilize. So I think that's where we should make sure that we invest in children. We should cost every aspect. If there are children's laws, we should cost how much that do we need to implement the Children's Act. We must cost all those laws. We can take examples of Lesotho and Swaziland. They were able to cost the Children's Act. To say in Zimbabwe, we need 100 million to implement the Children's Act to make sure that children. So we need to cost those acts. We need to invest in our children in terms of the junior parliament, the junior councillors. They should have budget for them to carry on their own initiatives, so that when they present those initiatives to the senior parliament, they've already practiced that at local level, at local councils. We have seen good examples, for example, the Chinoi Junior Council, where the now senior councils always allocate some money to the junior council so that they carry out their activities. So if all the local council authorities can do that, and then that is cascaded to the national level, where we see the finance minister, the minister of finance also allocating enough resources for the junior council, for the junior parliament, so that we are teaching them leadership skills, and they want them to make sure that they are the custodians of other children's rights. They are representing other children. So we need really to invest in children. I think for Zimbabwe, we know how the benefits of investing in terms of our children, in terms of the human resource that we boast of. But if we ignore this generation of children, this bulge that is there, and we don't equip them with skills, we don't equip them with the education, with knowledge, then in the near future, I think we'll run into problem. So let's invest in the children.
I think the best starting point is the one that Reverend Nyanhete mentioned earlier, that let's go to every political party and say, in your manifesto, if there are no children's issues, then that manifesto should not even be...
Yes. I think that's what we have been thinking. So we need to analyze those political party manifesto to say, what is in there for children? We don't want children to be lamed, because they also, if there is a danger, if they are lamed there, then they are ignored. There should be direct resources allocated to children and the youth in terms of that. So we need to see, because this is the majority of the population. So more investment should be done in them. And we're also thinking about the future. So that how is our future as Zimbabwe, as SADC, as Africa? What are we do? So we need to do. We can learn from China. They invested very much in the population of China. Those who are now working, running the Chinese economy, they were trained when they were still youth and children. They harnessed that demographic dividend because they were able to invest in the children. So I think that's our approach. You're saying let's invest in children, even starting at family level. For when you're sending your child in school, you're not just sending because the child needs to go to school. Let's treat that as an investment. You should be able to calculate, how much am I investing in my child? How is he able to go into to produce for my family and for the country in future? So let's treat children as an investment case, not a welfare case.
Indeed. Yeah. On that note, we must end this discussion. I would like to thank my panel tonight for coming through and for sharing these insights. Certainly, I think very important work that you're undertaking, and We wish you all the best. Reverend, you said that, I like the pragmatism that came out of this, meeting that you've just had, that it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be something that, will happen at the waving of a wand. It will take time to get there. But what is important is that you are engaging the policymakers, the people that matter, and hopefully as you speak to parliamentarians more, they will push the executive in order to be able to implement these things. So thank you so much, Reverend, for coming through and for sharing your insights. That was Reverend Taylor Nyanhete. He's the National Director for the National Council for the Welfare of Children. Alongside him was Maxim Murungweni. He's the Programs Manager for the same organization. And last but not least, the Southern Africa Senior Regional Advocacy Director for World Vision, Madrine Chiku. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming through. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in and who listened to us. It's always a pleasure bringing you this effort. We call it Ask the MP. It is only on ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. Keep it here. Up next is Health Matters with Larry. He's talking about heart diseases. Stay tuned for that and a whole lot more. Good night.